Greetings to all of you. I'm Pastor Timothy Muse, lead pastor here at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Alliance, Ohio. And it's a joy to be with you today on this 33rd session on the book of Revelation, session number 33 on the book of Revelation. As always, it's a joy to be part of your day, whatever part of the day you're engaging this. I would encourage you to have a Bible open in front of you as we wander through and examine this incredible and powerful book. You may have a printed copy in front of you, or if you're listening online, you may have as you're listening online, you can pull up a digital copy. If you don't know where to go, BibleGateway.com is a great resource for interpretations and biblical text. So, we're studying the book of Revelation. If this is the first time that you're with us, welcome. I would encourage you certainly to go back and look at some of the previous lessons. We are walking through the book from the beginning to the end. So certainly I would encourage you to take some time to go back and look at some of the previous stuff, particularly the first session where I talk about a lot of the numerology and symbolism and the such that comes with apocalyptic literature, as well as specifically the book of Revelation. So Revelation is in the back of the book. It's in the back of the Bible. It's the last book of the Bible, last book of the New Testament. So we are in chapter 17. I will be working with the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. That's the text that I use to examine this. Now we have just finished, chapter 16, we just finished the 7 bowls of the wrath of God. Apocalyptic literature, it has, it's repetition with addition. So we've seen a number of these cycles of 7, 7 being the complete number. These cycles of 7 where God pours forth wrath upon the earth, God pours forth wrath upon the detractors, God pours forth wrath upon everybody. And then the thing about keeping in mind when we see this is that the Christian who is alive during the wrath of God isn't necessarily saved from earthly destruction. That's not the promise. The promise is that the Christian is saved through the destruction, that the promise is that the Christian is protected on the other side of this. So now we're going to move a little bit. We're going to move a little bit to the role of the Roman Empire in the Christian persecution, and then God's ultimate judgment on the Roman Empire. One of the things I want you to keep in mind is that apocalyptic literature, like any other literature, but particularly, and this is where apocalyptic literature gets some confusion. This book was written by a particular person at a particular time for a particular time. Now, yes, its information does stretch out over the millennia. It does have an openness to it that allows the words to be interpreted at any given point in history. We can take these words and we can apply them to any given point in history, and we can see correlations and we can see how this work is coming forward. However, it is important for us to keep in mind that this work was specifically written for the Christians in Rome after the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. So the imagery that we see, that we're going to talk about more fully today as we really get into the role and the imagery of the Roman Empire, is to understand that the Roman Empire was the empire that was oppressing the Christians during the early expression of the church. It was the Romans who were persecuting the Christians. It was the Romans who were killing the Christians. It was the Romans who were the anti-Christian movement. We saw this when we talked about the beast, when we talked about the dragon being the devil and the dragon standing behind the throne of the beast being the Roman Empire, the Roman emperor and the Roman Empire. So a lot of the imagery that we're getting here that's really going to come out in chapter 17, 18, and 19 as we move to the end of the book, this imagery is going to focus specifically around the Roman Empire and Rome's influence on the Christian church and on the Christian identity. So it's really important for us to hold on to that. It's really important for us to know that, because it makes the imagery more fully coming alive, and it helps to make the imagery make sense. Because a lot of it doesn't make sense for us in our current modern context. The ideas, the underlying foundations, yes, of course. So when someone peers into the book of Revelation and tries to pull an image out of that book and superimpose it on the world today, it's very hard to do, because the imagery was specifically focused towards the Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire was the great beast that was oppressing the Christians during the early part of the church. So it's important to hold on to that. It's important to hold on to the understanding that John wrote Revelation at a particular time for a particular time. We are blessed to be able to look into it, but John's vision was for a particular group of people. The Christians in Rome at the time of the Roman Empire. All right, so let's jump into chapter 17 here. And usually I read like down to a break, but I'm going to break it up just a little bit more. So then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came to me and said, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk." All right, so one of the seven angels, doesn't matter which one of the seven with the bowls comes to John and says, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters." Okay, the imagery here now. Throughout the Old Testament and even into the New Testament, the great whore was talked about as pagan cities. Any pagan city, any city that didn't follow God was called a whore. Okay? Was called, and not necessarily from it's not necessarily meant to be a female derogatory statement. It is meant to be a statement more along the lines of someone who would sell themselves, sell their physical being for money. Okay, that's the definition. That would be the definition of a whore. Okay, so the pagan cities, they open themselves to allow others to come in for profit, gain. Okay, it's very visceral. It's a very earthy and not a very positive vision, and it's meant to be. Okay, it's meant to be. Rome is seen as a whore, has sold itself, sold its soul. Its people have sold themselves for wealth and power and peace. This is a very, this cuts really close to home for our own modern identity. We can see these images of how maybe we as communities, or we as a country, or we as a city, or whatever, have sold out our underlying principles for gain or wealth or power. I've served the church for many years in many different capacities. I've seen many different things. And I've seen communities that have sold out their underlying foundation of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ in order to save their own selves or keep their own identity. It happens. That would be whoring oneself. Again, and it's not a very positive image. John is not interested. The angels are not interested in flowering something that doesn't need to be flowered. And remember, and we've talked about this before, you're either in or you're out. There is no middle ground when it comes to God. You're either following God or not following God. And if you're not following God, then you're selling yourself out to something else. We are not our own gods. We are not our own identity. We are not our own creator. So there is one who stands above us. It is either God or anything else. That is what John is driving here. Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore is seated on many waters. So whoring oneself, being a pagan city, turning away from God, equals judgment. God's not like, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want to do. I don't care. No, God does care. And God is going to bring about this judgment. That's the whole point of this. The whole point of this journey of faith is to draw people into God, but at some point that journey comes to an end. At some point God draws the line in the sand and says, no more, not going to happen. There's going to be repercussion for not following what I've asked you to do. That's where God's at. So this judgment is going to happen. And the vision of seated on many waters. Now, John has talked about Rome as being Babylon. So there's a double vision here. Babylon was talked about as the city on many waters. But also, Rome, the way it's stretched out around the Mediterranean, it is a city on many waters. So Rome was a seafaring city. They had a navy. They understood the water. So the vision here, it's clear. There is no doubt that not only is this Rome, but Rome is being connected back to Babylon. Now, I don't know if I've been as clear about this or not. Babylon is the great enemy of the Israelites. The Babylonians were the one who came in and took over. Now, we could maybe call the Egyptians the great enemy of the Israelites because they were slaves for 430 years in Egypt. But Egypt didn't invade and take over. The Israelites became slaves in Egypt over time. Their presence in Egypt started with Joseph and Jacob and the family, but that kind of morphed over time into something more, into slavery as pharaohs came and went and people forgot. Babylon is the great agitator. Babylon is the great aggressor. They came in and they invaded. They wiped out the 10 northern tribes and they took the 2 southern tribes into captivity. So Babylon is the great enemy, the great oppressor. So Rome, being the modern Babylon, is the great oppressor of the Christians, most of whom would have known the story of the Jewish tales in the Old Testament of Babylon. So that's where this imagery is coming from. So John, seeing this, knowing that Rome has this great power, that Rome is ultimately going to fall. That's the underlying key that we like to hold on to in understanding this, is that ultimately at the end of the day, no matter how much the enemies of the world, the powers of the world press in on the Christian, they will ultimately fail. Because God wins. No matter how big things get, God is always bigger. No matter how big things get, God is always bigger. So I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters, Rome, who has sold itself for pleasure, profit, advancement, etc., has not bowed down to God, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. So again, the image is very clear. It's very visceral, but it's very clear. The kings of the earth, these would be all the nations that have come into Rome, both through conquest without revolution or through barter and trade. So these are the kings of the earth that have come into Rome and committed fornication. Fornication would be loosely defined as any kind of intimate activity, either outside of a marital covenant or activity for gain or profit or prosper or abuse or what have you. So have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk. So not only is it that Rome is so big and powerful, this great whore, but then the kings of the earth have come in, committed fornication. And it's not just the kings, but then the kings go back and they say, hey, look at what Rome is offering us. Look at what we're getting from Rome. Look at all the pleasure and all of this. And as that dwindles down, as that spreads out, and there is no revolt, there is no revolution, there is no step back to say, no, wait a minute. What we've held dear and true as unacceptable for hundreds and hundreds of years, now Rome is coming in and saying it's acceptable and we are going to follow it. Not a good deal. And I think we can see that in our own identity, in our own lives as Christians. There have been some things that we have held dear for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have believed to be true. On remembering the Sabbath day to keep it holy. There was a time, I even remember it, when the church, was standing room only. Now, I was very young when that happened, but it was standing room only. But in time, the church has allowed other influences to affect it. And now I look out over the community and I see people, faithful people, who aren't in the building, but are off doing other things because they've allowed another authority figure to take stand. And that's exactly that's getting drunk on the fornication of the kings. By saying that what God has said for so long is no longer adequate, because these over here are saying we like this better. Now, this is not to say, again, I'm going to make this very clear. I do not think that we need to transgress back to 200 years ago theologically. I think that we still need to continue to move forward and reevaluate and re-understand. But that's a conscious effort done by the community as a whole, not just an outside influence. I'll give you a perfect example. We here in the Lutheran Church have been ordaining women over 50 years. Now, the old theological stance was that women couldn't be leaders in the church. We, in time and prayer and discussion, as a church, chose to go in a different direction around that, seeing the value of women in leadership. But we didn't have anybody come in from the outside and say, hey, pull away from God and start doing these things. There's the difference. There's a difference between internal understanding and internal advancement versus, hey, this is what's going on over here and it looks better, so we're going to abandon this to go do this. So what Paul, I'm such a Pauline theologian. What John talks about here is that not only has Rome set itself up against God, but it is now affecting those who interact with it. It is affecting those who interact with it. The kings that come in, and then the kings are affecting their citizenry. So it is like it's like a virus. Here we are in the midst of this pandemic, and the pandemic that we're facing is a very contagious virus, and it is passed from person to person through aerosol. So it is like, hey, I've got the virus. Well, now I'm just spewing this virus on everybody around me, who are spewing it on everybody around them, who are spewing it on everybody around them. That's what Rome does. Rome is filtering down its own polytheistic controlling of the world. And that's the fornication, because anybody who comes in to take a hold of that, well, they're going off and they're affecting their people. That's the wine that is being drunk, if you will. All right, so he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. And on her forehead was written a name, a mystery: Babylon the Great, mother of whores and of earth's abomination. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. Well, that sounds pleasant, doesn't it? That sounds kind of wonderful, huh? Wow, thanks for that. Again, what we want to keep in mind here, a lot of vision, a lot of interpretation, a lot of symbolism. All right, so John says, though he carried me away in the spirit. And what does that mean? What does that mean, in the spirit? So again, and this goes all the way back to the beginning, when the voice from heaven calls John up. Is it a physical thing? Is it a spiritual thing? So in this, we kind of get the idea that John is in some kind of spiritual journey, spiritual trance, some kind of out-of-body experience, if you will. But regardless, so we're seeing that John is having a vision but isn't necessarily moving physically. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names. And it had 10 horns, it had 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, so again, you know, the vision of a woman, we saw, remember way back when we saw the woman in the wilderness, okay? And she was going to give birth to the Messiah, and the dragon was there to catch the child. And remember that? Okay, so again, same imagery. John is running down the same imagery of a woman giving birth, but this time, this woman giving birth, this woman is the antithesis, the anti what the woman was before. So this is not a positive role model, this is a negative role model. This is one who has given birth to this awful. But listen to her description. Okay, so the woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. So the beast was again, the beast is the Roman emperor. 7 heads, 10 horns. 7 heads. Everybody, you know, it's common knowledge that Rome was the city built on 7 hills. So clear imagery. 7 heads, 10 horns. This is the line of Roman emperors. And as it lays out, you know, the line of Roman emperors is 10. If you take out like the 8 or 9 or 10 Roman emperors who ruled for a day or a week or a month or 6 months. You know, there's a number of Roman emperors that ruled only a little bit, and their names have been really kind of lost to history. Unlike Augustus and Caesar and Tiberius and Nero and Caligula, these big name Roman emperors, there's a lot of Roman emperors that ruled only for a very short period of time. So this beast, 7 heads, 10 horns. So this is Rome. The beast is Rome. It is meant to represent Rome. And what sits on the beast, who sits on the beast, is the temptress is the temptation of Rome. Okay, again, keeping in mind, and we're reading this 2,000 years later, keeping in mind that women were seen as the temptress. All right, and please understand, I'm not verifying this or even apologizing for it. This is just how it was. So the beast is Rome, and the woman on the beast is the one who is tempting people. This is the temptation of Rome. Rome is a very temptation-oriented place. It's a very tempting place. Anything you possibly want, you can go to Rome and get. Anything. Rome was a place filled with anything and everything. From carnal pleasures to food to beautiful scenery to exotic animals. Anything you could want in Rome. So Rome was a very tempting place. Kind of like there's a place in town that is very tempting, and I don't want to call it out for what it is, but it's got a blue front with a yellow flower on it, and you can get anything there, anything, and that's what makes it so tempting. Is it's just about anything you could possibly want, you can go there and get, from auto parts to food to clothing. It may not necessarily be the best, or it may not necessarily be good for you, but it's a very tempting place to go. Very tempting place to go. Well, that was Rome. Rome was a very tempting place because you could get whatever you wanted there. So the vision, and as we carry on, so I saw the woman sitting on the scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names. So again, the whole point of the blasphemous names is this is maybe a tempting place, but it's not a good place. And I'm not casting or disparaging any evil upon the place I just described. I'm just using it as an example of a place of temptation. But this place is this beast is full of blasphemous names. So this is a place of evil. Blasphemy is turning away from God. So this is not a place that the believer wants to be, but it is very, very, very tempting. Very tempting. And even the temptress on the beast, listen to it. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. This is something that is beautiful to behold. So Rome was a place that was beautiful to behold. The temptation of Rome was beautiful to behold. Which, if we really think about temptation, if temptation isn't beautiful or savory or attractive, who would want it? I mean, honestly, who would want it? And many of you know I'm a great lover of donuts. Okay? Great lover of donuts. Donuts are wonderful. They're very tasty. Of course, they're not very good for me, which is why they're a temptation. They shouldn't be part of my staple diet. So if you have a donut, fresh and soft and maybe a little bit warm, whether it's a cake donut wrapped in sugar and cinnamon, or whether it's a yeast donut that has like icing and coconut on top of it or what have you. Very tempting. Very tempting. To look at it makes your mouth water. Start to think about it. Yeah. Now, if that donut was on the floor, covered in dirt and dog hair, what would you do with it? Would you pick it up and eat it? No, you throw it away. Because it's not very tempting. Or maybe it's tempting, but it's a disappointment because you lose the temptation. The ick factor outruns the temptation. So Rome isn't going to look ugly, at least not on the surface. It's going to be very beautiful, very tempting. So those who look upon Rome are going to be drawn to it. You look at the two great gambling cities in the United States, Atlantic City and Vegas. I know that gambling has really kind of exploded across the country, but there was a point where Vegas and Atlantic City were the two places you would go to gamble. And you would go, to Atlantic City, you'd go on the boardwalk and all these casinos and beautiful, but you wander a block or two off of the main drag and it's no longer wonderful or beautiful. Same with Vegas. Vegas has the strip and there's all kind of lights and glitter, but you get a little far off the strip and it's not wonderful and glittering. That's the vision. That's the vision we hold on to. So here's the woman, and she's decked out. Purple and scarlet. These are colors that were hard to come by, expensive. They represented royalty. They represented something great. They're very attractive. So people would be attracted to her vision, attracted to this temptation. And gold and jewels and pearls. And holding in her hand a golden cup full of the abominations and the impurities of her fornication. So, again, very attractive. The temptation of Rome was very attractive, even to the believer. This is the hard part. If the temptation wasn't attractive, it wouldn't be an issue. I mean, let's be clear. Let's be clear here now for a minute. If the devil came to you right now, in all of the evil essence of the devil, the full manifestation of the maliceness of evil showed up at your door, you'd run. There's no way you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I mean, you're very attractive. Woohoo, yeah, that's awesome. That's not how the devil works. The devil doesn't work by just overwhelming us with evil. The devil tempts us in things that look beautiful, wonderful, incredible. Working that extra hour to get a little bit more pay. Or striving to have that nicer car. Or whatever it is that the devil tempts you with. We're all tempted with different things. Our temptations are not awful. They're very enticing. They actually look really good. But we know that they're temptations because if we achieve them or strive for them, they're painful to us. Like my donut. I love a good donut, but I pay the price as soon as I'm done eating it. That's why I know it's a temptation. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing John, the beast, and then the woman on the beast is spectacular. And on her forehead, so we have the golden cup full of the abominations and the impurities of her fornication. So it is very clear, and I want to make sure I raise this up. It is very clear that what she offers is not in line with God. Rome and God are not walking side by side here. Rome is here, and God is here. Okay? They're in different paths. And in the cup is the expression of the fact that what she is offering, you drink from this cup, you're drinking to your own abomination. Which is kind of because, if you think about the sacramental image of Christ, the cup of forgiveness that we get at the table, the body and blood. Well, if you drink from the cup of Christ, you get salvation and redemption. That is the gift of holiness. But if you drink the cup of the woman, that is the temptation of Rome. That is the abomination. Again, and because she's a woman, yes, there is that imagery. But I don't hold up that imagery because she's a woman. The whole point of her presence is to be this beautiful temptation. But what she has in her hand is not life-giving. What's in her cup is not life-giving, versus what's in the cup of Christ that is life-giving. See, we're setting up we need to set up a very clear boundary, very clear good and evil, right and wrong. Okay, and that's what we're setting up. We're setting up this vision of the cup of Christ versus the cup of Rome. Which one are you going to drink from? This cup tastes really, really good. This cup tastes really, really good, but it's not very good for you. This cup doesn't necessarily taste very good, but it is awesome for you. What are you going to drink from? That is the question that is being raised up here. On her forehead was written a name, which, again, and this is very Roman. A lot of the courtiers and the higher-ups would wear some kind of name on their forehead, some kind of ribbon, or some would even have it inscribed on their forehead. Like a tattoo. Okay? So, and the name was Babylon the Great, mother of whores and of the earth's abomination. Babylon the Great. So again, Babylon, Rome. There's the correlation there. The earth's abomination. So John is being shown that Rome is the infection of the earth. Rome, its leadership, its politics, all of it is the infection of the earth. The earth is infected by Rome. Infected by Rome. So this just isn't a passing thing. This isn't just like some kind of little skin infection on the arm. This is a blood infection of the earth. Rome is the blood infection of the earth, and it needs to be cleaned out. And there's only one who can clean it out, and that's God. And I saw, and here's really again, hones it down to a point, and I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of saints and the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. Rome, not only did it kill the Christians, not only was Rome the main reason for Christian martyrdom, but also, sorry, I'm getting a little breeze here on my back, but also, Rome, it loved it. It reveled in it. Rome had a bloodlust. The Romans had bloodlust. The gladiator games, the feeding to the lions, that whole bit. Rome had a bloodlust. They were a very brutal people. And they got drunk watching Christians be martyred. They loved it. They long for it. They yearn for it. They yearn for that martyrdom. Rome, so that's the temptation. The woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. It wasn't just eradicating the Christians. It was sport. They loved it. The people loved it, which then made it all the harder because, it's one thing when you have a group of people looking for you, but when everybody's looking for you. And that was a struggle for the Christians. It wasn't just that the centurions and the government was looking, but everybody was looking for the Christians because they got drunk on the blood. They got drunk on the martyrdom. They loved it. Rome is a very tempting place. Rome is a place that is against everything that God has ordained and desires in the world. Is this the first city to be like this? No. Is it the last city to be like this? No. Is this the last empire? No. But John is writing to the Christians who are living in the Roman Empire. And they're all like, yep, we get it. We see this. This is totally clear. If we were to rewrite Revelation to speak to where we are today, which many preachers, they don't necessarily rewrite Revelation, but they speak apocalyptically to where we are today, it would look different, but not a whole lot different. It wouldn't necessarily be the Roman Empire. It could be capitalism. It could be industrialism. It could be, xenophobia, whatever. But John is writing this letter to the people, the Christians living in Rome, and laying out this great battle between God and the Roman Empire. And also reminding, saying to the Christians, look, that temptation looks really, really sweet. It looks really, really good, but it is not worth it. Because you will drink the cup of abomination and fornication and not the cup of Christ. Very much in or out. You're either with Christ or you are with the Romans. There is no middle ground. All right, my friends, we're going to break here for today. And we're going to pick up next time and see what happens. There's so much to this. I know that we could be moving faster. I don't necessarily have a timeline to finish the book. We'll get there. But there's so much to it. I want to make sure that we're clear about what is being offered. I want to make sure that we're clear about what the writer is saying, and not only how it works in the words, but also how it works for us in the world today. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, my information will be up when the session is over. You can reach out to me, or you can, and I'll answer you. I'll try to answer you directly, or I'll bring it up in the next session, or however that works, however I can weave it in. But I'd like this to be a dialogue. If you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. I hope you have a great day. Whatever your day brings, wherever you are at in your day, I hope what comes after this is great and powerful. I hope that God blesses you and continues to watch over you always. Take care. We'll see you soon.